All right, so today we're diving into some pretty murky waters.
Hmm.
U.S.-Ukraine relations.
Yeah, you could say that again.
Definitely a hot topic in the news lately.
Absolutely.
And we've got these excerpts from an article called Trump, Zelensky, and the Future of U.S.-Ukraine Relations. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, even the title kind of tells you that things are complicated.
Definitely not a simple situation. No.
So I guess the goal here is, well, two things, really. First, how do we even get to this point,
Yeah.
where things are this tense?
Right.
And second, what does it all mean going forward? Not just for the U.S. and Ukraine, but like the whole global scene.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's not just about these two countries. We're talking about potential global instability here.
Exactly. Okay, so the article really paints this picture of a relationship that was already pretty strained even before, well, the Oval Office blow up.
Right. Even before that whole incident, tensions were high.
Yeah, I mean, you had Trump saying some pretty eyebrow-raising things about Zelensky,
Yeah.
calling him a dictator, even blaming Ukraine for starting the war with Russia.
Yeah. Publicly, too. And that's going to have some impact, right? On how Zelensky views Trump and the U.S. in general. I mean, can you really see them as a reliable ally after that?
That's the question, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, especially when you consider that things were very different under the Biden administration. Like, they were building a strong alliance.
Exactly. It was a partnership. And then you have this shift from that to basically open animosity. It's a huge swing. And it could signal a real crisis for NATO.
Okay, so back up for a second. NATO crisis.
Mm.
That sounds pretty serious.
It is. I mean, NATO's whole purpose is collective defense, right? An attack on one is an attack on all, that idea.
Right.
But if there are these cracks in that unity, well, it weakens the whole thing, makes it harder to deter aggression.
I see.
Like, in practical terms, you might see less military cooperation between members, hesitation to provide aid when needed, and, adversaries might start feeling bolder, testing the waters.
So a recipe for instability, basically.
Exactly.
So the big question is why? How do we get to this point? The article kind of hints that Trump might be trying to get back in Putin's good graces.
Right, yeah.
And maybe he's thinking he can do that by putting the squeeze on Ukraine, offering Putin concessions, maybe even at Ukraine's expense.
That's definitely one of the theories the article explores. And there's this example they give. It's about Zelensky refusing to sign what they call a minerals deal.
What's that all about?
Well, it's not totally spelled out, but reading between the lines, it seems like maybe this deal was, well, a way to appease Putin.
I see.
What's interesting, though, is that Ukrainians, according to the article, they don't think an agreement with Putin would mean much.
Why not?
They think he wouldn't honor it. They see him as basically an existential threat, They're fighting for their survival.
Right. So in that context, it makes sense why Zelensky's been pushing so hard for those U.S. security guarantees.
Yeah, absolutely. He's leading a country facing an invasion. He needs some kind of assurance that they're not alone.
So what exactly are these security guarantees anyway? Like, what would they actually involve?
Well, in this case, it'd probably mean a commitment from the U.S. to defend Ukraine if Russia attacks again.
Okay.
That could include military aid, sharing intelligence, maybe even, direct military intervention. It's not a small thing.
And there's precedent for this kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Like during the Cold War, the U.S. basically pledged to defend Western Europe against the Soviets. That was a big part of keeping things from boiling over.
So now that those guarantees are, well, not there, it creates this dangerous void.
Exactly.
Okay, so it seems like all this tension, especially over the security guarantees, kind of blew up in that Oval Office meeting.
Oh, yeah, that shouting match.
With J.D. Vance involved somehow.
Right.
And the article makes this crazy suggestion that maybe that public fight, maybe it was deliberate.
Yeah, they float that idea, like maybe it was a way to manipulate Zelensky. Or even create a crisis that he could be blamed for.
Man, that's a pretty dark thought. And the consequences could be huge. The article even suggests that Trump might freeze military aid to Ukraine entirely.
Yeah, and that's a game changer. If the U.S. backs out, who picks up the slack? Europe.
Maybe.
But can they handle it? Some countries might step up, but others might hesitate. It could create even more division within NATO, within Europe.
Yeah, it's a mess. And then the biggest question of all, what about Ukraine? I mean, they seem determined to keep fighting.
They do.
But without the U.S. backing them up, how long can they really keep that up?
That's the million-dollar question. Ukraine's future is completely up in the air right now, and the decisions made in Washington are going to have a huge impact.
So just to recap, relations between the U.S. and Ukraine are a mess, NATO's looking shaky, and Ukraine's future is totally uncertain.
You got it. High stakes all around.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It really is. And I think it leaves us with this big question hanging over everything. What role should the U.S. play in all this? With all these complexities. Do they try to smooth things over with Russia, even if it means leaving Ukraine hanging? Or do they stick by Ukraine, even if it means things could escalate with Russia?
Yeah.
Tough choices. And whatever they decide, it's going to have a huge impact on the world for years to come.
No easy answers here. Thanks for breaking it all down for us.
My pleasure.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's a complicated issue and one that deserves our attention. We'll keep following the developments and see where things go from here.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
See you then.